The People's National Party considers education and training as the only legitimate key for national growth and social peace. And so since the 2019-2020 budget has been tabled and there are other issues arising in the public sphere regarding education and training, we decided to invite you to this press conference. I wish to restate that the party's position, consistent from many years, is that we think education should be placed beyond the partisan sphere. We do not criticize and make personal remarks about issues to do with education. We feel that the young people of Jamaica, the nation as a whole, requires as much as possible a joint approach to education, and our hands are always extended to the administration at whatever time for collaboration. It is in this regard that we, with regard to the primary exit profile, Mrs. Foster Allen has played an active role in the advisory committee, and there are other areas of collaboration. This, however, doesn't mean that we will not criticize constructively when we feel there is cause to do so. This morning we wish to cover 4 or 5 subjects. First of all, some comments on the primary exit profile, since in fact that's going to be started tomorrow. Then a look at the budget for education and training, which is going to tell us what the policies for the next financial year are going to be. After that, Mrs. Foster Allen will lead on a worrying trend that we see where persons in the education and training system are being encouraged never to criticize, and indeed being offered or proposed penalties if and when they do. Mrs. Sutherland has concerns, as we all do, about the school feeding program and the difference between aim and achievement. And then I'll ask MP Stewart, please, to address us on the issue of the funding of schools, of which much has been said and far too little achieved. May I begin with the issue of the primary exit profile tomorrow. First of all, as you know, the People's National Party and many other factors in the society have had serious questions about the way in which the primary exit profile has been introduced. We ourselves in our administration played a very significant part in advancing the road, along the road to PEP. But we do not feel that it has been introduced with the correct concerns for the training of teachers, the readiness of students and parents, because of the very fundamental and significant shift in pedagogy and assessment which it occasions. At this time, however, those concerns have to be put in the background. We come here today to offer encouragement and support for all of those students who are beginning the PEP pilgrimage tomorrow. We want to invite you to be calm and resolute and do your very best. Think carefully before you answer your papers, your questions, but follow the instructions and do your very best. We encourage parents not to panic or to overreact to children's nervousness. We ask them to be supportive of their children, to make sure that they have something healthy to eat before they go to the examination. We ought to be able to take that for granted, but we can't. It's worthy of encouragement. And we ask teachers to be particularly mindful of the new rubrics to do with PEP and to give their students every support. The People's National Party stands behind the young people of Jamaica as they prepare themselves for this new way of examination, which ultimately will mean for a better and more inclusive education system. We wish them all very well. And thank the officials too of the Ministry of Education for their diligence and effort intensified in recent times, as best they could, given the constraints of time, to better explain and better prepare for this. That's the comment we have. We appreciate you to carry on the issue of PEP. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I'd now like to take you to an analysis of the Ministry of Education's Youth and Information budget as tabled for the upcoming financial year. First of all, we wish to express disappointment. There is a 2% only rise in the increase in the education and training budget for this year. That means that when you factor inflation, we are going to have less money to spend than we did last year. And that is unacceptable. The People's National Party wants to ask this nation if to agree with us that we have to make extremely high national security allocations. We have to suffer the anguish and the distress of crime and violence because we don't do it right the first time, because our education and training system, which includes the very crucial and predominant area of proper socialization, is wanting. We have low gross domestic product because of a weak education spend. That is our principle. Education is the area that we should be investing more and more in. And the revised estimates for last year, and remember this includes youth and information as well, which is included in this because of the alignment of the ministry. $102 billion, I'm rounding figures, and for this coming year it is only 106. And then when you look forward, as the budget analysis helpfully does, for the future, you are looking at 7% increases. Again, only just equal to anticipated inflation for the years 2020 right through to 2023. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, this is no way to transform education. This is no way to move Jamaica forward. This is no way to gain prosperity for all. And this year, we can't be sanguine because we know that there has been over $40 billion additional revenue taken from the people's pockets in order to provide a healthy surplus in money. And we think that more of this should have been used. We would want to see somewhere in the region of 15% increase every year going forward in order to fully achieve the objectives of educational transformation, which have been agreed by the two political parties from the time of the transformation report in 2000 and early in 2004, I think. Please remember that 70% of the education budget goes on salaries. And therefore there is limitation, severe limitation on the issue of programs. We're very concerned, for example, that in terms of early childhood education, about which much has been said and promised, the allocations are flat. There is no increase of money to match the rhetoric. Last year, the estimates were, last financial year was $3.5 billion for early childhood. This time it is 3.38. That's actually a nominal decline. How do you explain that when we all know that the secret to better results, to more adjusted young people, lies in the early childhood area? Mrs. Sutherland will speak to the issue of school feeding, but suffice it for me to say that when you look at the allocation for school nutrition at the early childhood sector, so-called brain builder centers, you know, it takes money and it takes to provide food at these for brain building. And if you don't allocate enough, you are compromising the perhaps half of the children at that sector and in all sectors who in fact require nutritional assistance because their parents cannot afford to send them to school properly nourished. I wish to point out to you in respect of primary education that revised estimates for last year, 19.4 billion, this year the same. So where is the improvement in the almost 700 primary schools going to take place? Who is going to pay for that? I note particularly too that in the crucial areas within primary education of guidance, counseling, literacy instruction, yes, are both absolutely flat, no new money, when obviously and observably there has been a need for increase there. The same is true for secondary education. There are 167 secondary schools. MP Stewart will speak about their financial difficulties later on, but again, there is absolutely no meaningful increment in that regard. One would have hoped that we would have seen an increase in the capital budget, but this is an area where I think the press should take a particular interest. The revised estimate for capital improvements in education last year was $1.7 billion. In this year's estimates, it's down to $1.25 billion. And inexplicably, for the next year, it goes down to 192 million only. And in 22-23, it goes down to 40 million only. We cannot explain that, and we oppose it. The education system needs capital improvements. We have heard about 17 new schools, haven't we? We know of the significant infrastructure requirements that are called for in our schools to make them effective. And the capital budget here is for you all to see. I think there are particular issues to do with school feeding and so on, which we will deal with later on. We repeat in closing on this point, we have to spend so much on national security because too many of our young people are not gaining the benefits and having the required outcomes from the public education system. It requires increased allocations, among other things, that will make it possible for us to prevent the leakage into gangs, the leakage into early pregnancy, when we have students who are leaving school under whatever conditions without the required outcomes. Education is the foundation of nation building. May I invite Mrs. Foster Allen to speak on the issues of persons who are engaged in the education field and who are also politically connected.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I think we'd all agree that discourse in education with some amount of intellectual rigor is very important. Criticizing, critiquing policies that's also very important. What we have seen, and I'm going to refer to some documents I have in front of me, is the attempt to intimidate, to restrict, and to censor persons who wish to speak out against certain, sometimes it's speaking out, sometimes it's just healthy criticism of policies that are being discussed or have been implemented. I know, and we should know, that the public service has a code of conduct in their staff orders for public servants. And under 4.2.6, it speaks about political activity. Officers are expressly forbidden to engage in any type of partisan political activity in any elections at any level. In the exercise of official duties, no service or benefit should be denied or provided to anyone on the basis of partisan political affiliation. So the public sector does have a sort of code of conduct. What has happened over the past few months is that the Minister of Education seemed to have had some difficulty with some persons becoming involved in political activities. Now, I do not believe that anybody, I'm a very law-abiding citizen, and I do not believe that anyone who is a public servant should actually go outside of what the public service orders say. In my time as a civil servant, I can recall one meeting at which I was actually asked to deliver a document to the then Minister of Education. And that was over my 22 years of service into the civil service and the public service. Never have I gone into any political activity because I was aware of the standards expected of me, and I followed those standards. And I would want, I'm sure the People's National Party would want to encourage all persons who want to be involved in political activity at whatever level to ensure that, you know, we go through the public service order or the civil service order. Those people who are employed, of course, by the public service or in the civil service. There's an issue, though, that I need to just point out. That this concept paper that has been put together, I believe by the Ministry of Education, Minister of Education, his staff, suggests that if you are a board member, you are not allowed, I'll read it out, school board members are not allowed to criticize the Minister of Education or Ministry of Education personnel in any public fora, including social media. Now, board members are citizens of Jamaica. They volunteer their time and their service. And are you telling me that if I see something going off and wrong as a citizen of Jamaica, I should not, whether I'm a board member or not, I shouldn't say, hold on, that doesn't look right. That doesn't sound right. Where is that leading us to? I have been thinking about how Mussolini and Stalin came into power. They came into power because they intimidated people, they censored thought and any question or any discourse that opposed what they thought, and then the next thing was violence. We cannot afford that any sort of situation in Jamaica that shuts down people from thinking and speaking honestly, speaking truth to power. I am not, and the party would never encourage anyone to make remarks that are defamatory or disparaging. And of course, the party, I believe, would and continues to tell people to regulate themselves. In 2003, 2004, the Gleaner took it upon itself, and rightly so, to begin a critique of the education system. It went on for about a year. That led to all sorts of people, teachers, board members, independent persons, parents, everybody and anybody talking about what obtained in education, what was wrong about education, and how we could go about fixing education. And that was under Ambassador Whiteman and then Mrs. Henry Wilson as Ministers of Education. I would want us to think, ladies and gentlemen of the media, that we ought not to go down that road in restricting and censoring and intimidating people with views that are important to be aired. I want to just make another point. I don't want to individualize it and personalize the thing, but in a, looks like a WhatsApp message between the minister and I think it is the political ombudsman. He says, Padmore principal just ran against Nigel Clark, still caretaker. Her chairman is Elaine Foster Allen, chairman of the PNP Education Commission. I just want to make it clear that I have never been the chair of the Padmore Primary School Board, and I am not likely to be the chair of the Padmore Primary School Board. And in fact, the minister should know that, because he would have approved board membership and board chairs. I rest my case. Thank you.
There is a little more to be said on that. The People's National Party is aware of a communication to a opinion columnist in the Observer newspaper who is employed to the University of the West Indies, where he is told that he ought not to criticize the minister or government policy.
At the highest level.
And that comes from the highest level. The People's National Party repudiates any effort to muzzle criticism that is constructively or lawfully issued in respect of any activity of any of our activities or indeed of the government, by the government. I'd just like to indicate that this morning the Minister of Education sent me a kind reminder. He sent me a picture of himself, and he referred to a comment that I am reported to have made when he was appointed senator many years ago. You will remember that he was nominated, took his seat, and then had to be withdrawn because of the circumstances. And he quotes me as having said that I reacted cautiously to news that he as principal of Jamaica College had been appointed a JLP senator. Indeed, I did. And I'm thankful for him to say this because it proves the point we're making. Yes? While I express caution, and I think persons with political affiliations ought to be cautious and ought to follow the rules that Mrs. Foster Allen has just spoken of, something which unfortunately didn't happen. The principal of Jamaica College at the time, in a public assessment in the Gleaner, rated my performance as a C-. And he also continued in his political activism, and nobody took any steps to censor him, and would never have done so. Yes? So, yes, we must be circumspect, and we must follow the rules. But when the shoe is on the other foot, you mustn't complain. The People's National Party's members who are engaged in political life will continue to do so in absolute fidelity to the public sector rules that have been set out. But beyond that, and certainly when we serve as board members or in any other capacity related to education, that can never, never be a cause for denying us our ordinary democratic rights to criticize one another. So we'd like to make that position very clear and encourage the understanding and support of the public.
May I just say something on this?
Yes, Member Stewart.
The recent pronouncement by the Honourable Minister of Education is tantamount to an attack on the democratic process of our country. And he should not get away with this at all. We have seen where in the past where several teachers in the legislature and the House of Representatives have contributed significantly to the growth and development of our country. Persons such as C.C. Campbell, Burchell Whiteman, Sidney Pagan, Howard Cook, Dr. Phyllis McPherson Russell, who was a Minister of Education, Tatius Golding, A.J.R. Byfield, and they're all listed in this book, The Teachers' Struggles Continue. And so to want to muzzle our teachers, our educators, I think it is wrong. I think it is an offensive move to really attack educators and upright, decent, honorable citizens who want to serve this country. And I am calling upon Jamaicans to really support the teachers in their struggles to have good representation in our respective communities. They are men and women of integrity, of good character, and they have done so in the past, and I don't believe that they are going to be breaching any regulations that would put the education system at risk. So I just want to say those points here.
I want to point out that this is a feature of this government. This government has shown itself to be a draconian and authoritarian type of government. And it is manifested in several of the activities that they have embarked upon. You can see it in the Prime Minister with the appointment of an acting Chief Justice, not understanding the difference between the executive and the judiciary. It comes now to our Minister of Education trying to muzzle the members of the education system. And then we also see it in how they choose to deal with crime. They choose not to use saturation policing, but they want to remove the rights of Jamaican people to be able to control crime. It's just not necessary. But it is clear it is a feature of this Prime Minister and his government that they choose draconian and authoritarian types of leadership to run this country. And it is further exacerbated in this budget. And specifically, I want to talk to the school feeding program. Because the most basic of social interventions that you would want to have is to ensure that your children who go to school are fed and not hungry so that they can learn. Basic. And in this budget, there's only a 6% increase in the amount allocated for this area. This 6% really works out to be $90 per child per day. Now, what can you feed a child on $90 per day? And I'm talking about the students on PATH. Not all of the students. 50% of our children are on PATH.
No, the 6%, the $90 is with the 6%. The
right.
full amount.
Full amount.
Yes, not the 6% by itself.
That's right. So that means that would indicate that there's a reduction in the amount that they have this year, because at certain levels we have $100 at the early childhood, $150 at the primary, and $130 per day currently at the high school level.
That's an average.
On average, right? And the fact of the matter is, as a PNP government, it is our intention, and we have stated very clearly, that we want to feed our children effectively, and every child in our school system must get at least one full healthy meal per day. And we intend to put the budgetary allocation behind that. This government has said that they want healthy food, Jamaican foods in schools. We agree with that. But then you have to actually act on that and show that you are serious about that by putting the money for it. You cannot give a healthy Jamaican meal for $90 per day to any child, right? And so all of this hullabaloo about pulling the bullets out and pulling out the bag juice, and we end up with $90 per day, we cannot take this government seriously. And we must believe that they are really at a place where they are saying that it's not about the social well-being of the people, it's about controlling the people.
I'd like to indicate the basis of the calculation that Mrs. Sutherland just gave. There are approximately 650,000 children from age 3 in the early childhood sector right up to grade 13 now. Yes? The number who are on PATH, who by definition cannot provide within their own family structure for their nutritional and other needs, is close to half we used a half. Actually, the numbers on PATH registered are less than that, but every school principal and teacher, and I invite former Principal Stewart to speak to this, will tell you that there are a number of persons who aren't on PATH, but who, in their circumstances, should be on PATH in order to be able to meet those basic requirements. So what we did was to take the total school feeding allocation in the budget, divide it by half of the student population, and then divide it by the 190 days of school activity per year. The allocation presently is higher than that basic figure that we gave Mrs. Sutherland, and also quoted that. But it is still inadequate to provide a full meal, and which I think members of the media know very often is the only meal that that child will get for the day. The People's National Party, as she said, has committed to one full meal a day. I don't think I would be breaching, or she or I would be breaching the sense of the party that in addition to one school meal, one full meal, consider it a midday meal. We need a breakfast program too, because a large number of our children, at least 30% of our children, come to school every day hungry. We know that. It is undeniable. If you don't speak to that, you could do whatever you like in the superstructure of education. It will not have the effect. And therefore, we must, in fact, address that, particularly when we have, I don't want to say excess funds, but we are past the issue where stabilization contracted the funds that could be available. We now have the money to do that which our children need.
May I just make a point, Ronnie? The minister needs to come clean and tell us what is happening with the school feeding program, in particular the distribution of Nutribonds and other food items to schools. In one case, I heard of there being 48 children in the school, 24 bottles of water and 24 Nutribonds, 48 children on PATH, 24 bottles of water and 24 Nutribonds delivered twice per week. So that would work out at half a bottle of water and half a Nutribon to each of those 48 children. Now, only twice per week. So it's not very clear where the ministry is, and I think in my talking to several principals, they're actually reporting this sort of uncertainty. Some people are saying they're not getting anything, or they're only getting half of what they used to get, or they get things on a sort of irregular basis. So we really need to hear from the minister what is going on.
Very brief. Briefly from Member Stewart, and then we welcome your questions.
Thank you. I would just like for the media to investigate who is the substantive holder of the post of principal at Jamaica College at this time.
Oops.
We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a significant decline in the capital and recurrent budget as it relates to capital budget, construction of schools. The Minister of Education, in his pronouncements recently, spoke about 17 new schools to be constructed. Mm-hmm. Where is the budget allocation for those schools? The People's National Party was on a course of removing schools from the shift system. We have seen where that has stalled. And parents are concerned, the entire Jamaican society is also concerned as to where this is headed. And to speak of 17 new schools being constructed, we have not seen the budgetary allocation for that. And so that is cause for concern for us. We have seen that there has been a reduced allocation in terms of school budgetary allocation. A number of schools last year were told that the civil servants, children of civil servants who attend the schools, were to go to the school to collect the fees that were paid. Some of these schools have honored the commitment. It has left them with a big hole in their budget. Several programs have had to be cut. Their sports program, their cultural program, extracurricular activities, their welfare programs have had to be cut significantly. because of this foolhardy pronouncement by the Honourable Minister. We are saying that this parents' contribution has been reduced to somewhere in the region of 45% average in the schools. So the schools are really bleeding as it relates to their financing.
Haven't been made up.
Haven't been made up at all. They have not gotten the support. And that is really cause of concern. And we ask the minister to come clean with regards to these funding for the schools.